On Target Institute presents a teaching from the Men on Target small group curriculum. Now with today's session, On Target founder Vince D'Acchioli.
Hello, how you doing? And welcome to Module 5, Session 35 of our Men on Target curriculum. In our last session, we dealt with exploring a man and his legacy, and my good friend Craig Glass from Peregrine Ministries was here to teach us. And I don't know about you, but if you haven't seen those, I would go look them up. They were really incredible. In this session, we're going to be talking about a man and his extended family. Sometimes I refer to this session as in-laws or outlaws, and the reason is because the kind of relationship we have with our extended family can be very profound. In fact, one of the biggest problems we face in our relationship with God and our spouse oftentimes comes from unresolved family relationships. Well, where does it all begin? It all starts really with our parents. The Bible says that we are to leave and cleave. In Genesis 2:24, it says, that is why a man leaves his father and mother and is united, or the word cleave there, to his wife, and they become one flesh. Now, here's what happens, guys. Oftentimes, we will leave physically, but not emotionally. And this can happen with either the man or the woman, sometimes with both. And what happens oftentimes is that depending upon the relationship you have with your earthly mom or your earthly dad, there can be control factors that get involved there where the parents are still trying to kind of reach into your life, and oftentimes it's their issue. They're not able to let go really totally. Sometimes it can become our issue. I know in my own relationship with my wife early on, we had such wonderful relationships with our moms and dads that it was hard for us to let go. We kept wanting to gravitate and go back to them and visit with them often. And that isn't always a problem, but sometimes, especially when you start to have little kids around, it can become an issue. That's why it's really important. Ephesians 6:2-3 is the first commandment with a promise. Let's look at it. It says, honor your father and mother, which is the first commandment with a promise, so that it may go well with you and that you may enjoy long life on the earth. The word honor there is the word kabed. It means to attach high value. It means that they are to be important to us. They ought to carry weight in our life, but we need to be very careful that we don't let that honor and that weight become dysfunctional. Now, the two promises, kabed, attach high value, the whole idea of carrying weight. It says in Leviticus 19:3, each of you must respect your mother and father, and you must observe my Sabbaths. I am the Lord your God. In Matthew 15:3-4, Jesus says this, and why do you break the command of God for the sake of your tradition? For God said, honor your father and mother, and anyone who curses their father or mother is to be put to death. This is very important to the Lord, that it be well with us. And by the way, the whole idea of being well with us and the whole idea of long life, studies show the result of harboring bitterness or unforgiveness through dysfunctional relationships. It's really important that we remember. Proverbs 17:22 says this. It says, a cheerful heart is good medicine, but a crushed spirit dries up the bones. Oftentimes we don't understand the Bible is really talking about physiological things that happen in us as the result of having emotions that are not dealt with properly. We kind of deal with this earlier in our material when we talk about letting go of the past, but in this context we're talking about the proper relationship with our earthly moms and dads. And if it's not, that if we're not cheerful, the result can be a drying up physiologically of the bones and other things that happen to us in our body. Gracious words, it says in Proverbs 16:24, are a honeycomb, sweet to the soul and healing to the bones. Again, the relationship between the emotions that happen as we are encouraging one another and the physiological implications in our body. Now, it's very important that we understand and even ask ourselves some questions about what's going on when it comes to our extended family with our moms and dads. But I want you to understand that this goes beyond just our moms and dads, and it includes our extended family. That's aunts and uncles and nephews and nieces. And here is where I'm going with this. And you got to understand that every family has this person. You know who they are. It's the one that you're going to see on that special holiday at Christmas time or Thanksgiving. It's when the family gets together, and there's usually always the black sheep or the person in the family that is a little bit kind of on the edge, and you're thinking, oh no, what's going to happen this time when we get together? I remember growing up, we had an Aunt Margie, the angry aunt. And every time we would get together at Aunt Margie's house, and all the family would meet there, like, for instance, around Christmas time. And they all liked to drink. They had, in those days, they called them highballs. They would all get the highballs going, And Aunt Margie, she was such a thorn in our extended family side that it was unbelievable. Every time we got together, they would end up in an argument or a fight. And I remember we kids, we used to pull up chairs, man, and we'd root for them. It was really incredible. It was funny to us, but it wasn't funny to the family. There were some deep, deep issues there that would cause severe problems in the family because we didn't deal with those things in a very functional way. And in those days, our moms and dads really didn't have a personal relationship with Jesus. We tried to deal with everything in our own flesh, and that can become a real big problem. But listen, as Christians, we've got to be bigger people than that. We must not allow this dysfunction to happen. Our role is to love people always. And I want to share with you 3 things to consider. If this is going on in your family, here are 3 things that I need you to really drill down on right now. The first is to do an attitude audit. Ask yourself the question, where am I in my attitude toward certain family members? Philippians 2, 4 and 5 says, don't look out only for your own interests, but take an interest in others. You must have the same attitude that Christ Jesus had, being able to view people through Jesus' eyes. I recommend that you make a list, write down how you feel, and maybe some of the things that are issues that you're having with various family members that we can come back to and refer to later. And perhaps even in this second idea, the second thing is to pray for and seek opportunity to restore the relationship. In our extended family, if there are people in our family now that we have a problem with, we will pray, Lord, give us an opportunity to restore. Give us an opportunity to come together and have a better understanding and to love people that sometimes we're inclined not to. Okay? And in Galatians 6:10, it says, therefore, as we have opportunity, let us do good to all people, especially those who belong to the family of believers. But the idea here is all people. No matter whether they're believers or not, we've got to look for opportunity to do good. And what I recommend is you develop a plan. Maybe try to get together with that family member and meet over some fun activity. I had this happen in my family many years ago. There was a person that I was really having a difficult time with, and I said, you know what? Can we meet together? And I knew this person liked to go to carnivals, and they were having a carnival at my high school. I remember that in my old high school. And so we went and we just walked around during the day, and we had fun together and laughed together. And when you do that with people, sometimes all the other stuff just kind of melts away. And so develop a plan. And then the third thing is to use your gifts to bless. Use your gifts to bless. 1 Peter 4:10 says, each of you should use whatever gift you have received to serve others as faithful stewards of God's grace in its various forms. An example in my own life. I used my gifts to bless my 2 nephews one day. This was many, many years ago. They were young boys, and I went to lunch with them. And they were struggling with some issues in their life. And I remember going to lunch with them and talking to them and having them give me some feedback. And I really had an opportunity during that lunch to really encourage them. I went right at them and I said, I went to Kevin and Jonathan. They're their names. I said, Kevin, let me tell you what I see when I look at you. And I was able to discern some things because God has given me a gift of discernment, discern some things that were happening in his life. And I could see his little eyes lighting up because his uncle was really loving on him and encouraging him. Same thing happened with Jonathan as I went to him and talked to him about some things that happened in their family that really hurt him earlier on. And so I had an opportunity to really encourage them. And I really want to encourage you to look for those kind of opportunities to do that and to bless them with the gifts that God has given you. Life implication. Listen, dysfunctional relationships in my extended family will hurt my relationship with God and my spouse. It is unbelievable. Once you settle those relationship issues, how much freer you feel and how much more God can show up in your relationships with Him and with your spouse. Very, very important. Life application. Here are some discussion questions that you really need to drill down on now. Identify family members you are having difficulty with. Maybe you don't have to mention them by name, but maybe you can talk about it a little bit in your group discussion. Identify, or maybe just do it privately and write down a couple of family members maybe that you're having difficulty with. Number 2, what are some practical things that I can do as a result of this teaching that will bring healing? What are some practical things that I can do? And go back to the 3 things we talked about. Develop a plan. Write down some of the issues you have. Develop a plan. Determined to go right at it. Listen, guys, the worst thing that we can do is be in denial. And listen, denial is not a river in Egypt. Denial is just saying to yourself, well, it's not so bad, and just kind of ignoring that the problem exists. I can't tell you how many times I've watched that dysfunction happen in my own family. Not dealing with it is going to stifle you. That's why God says if you're offering your gift at the altar and they remember that you got something against your brother or he's got something against you, leave your gift and first go and what? Be reconciled. That's what God is calling us to do. So I want to encourage you, have a lively discussion and think through what your plan will be to deal with dysfunctional relationships within your extended family. Our next program, we're going to talk about a man and his friends. Until then, don't forget about it.